Well, Sarah Jane, that was quite the adventure on the Nova Beacon. I wonder what we'll find here on Earth.
Oh, I hate Earth. I want to go back into the universe.
What?
What's this load of rubbish?
Is that a potato?
It's a Sontaran.
That's no Sontaran. That's a potato.
This is the last time I buy an action figure on eBay.
Beautiful, unspoiled countryside. No one set foot here for thousands of years.
What you're trying to say is that you're busy and you'd like us to push off.
I'd phrase it more elegantly myself, of course.
Welcome back to Outside the Box. My name is Michael French.
I'm Gary Mitchell.
And I'm Michael Faulkner.
And we are here to discuss the third Tom Baker story, and I believe the shortest, if I'm not mistaken.
Two episodes.
Yeah, the Sontaran experiment. Now, in the last video, I forgot to point out, the last vidcast podcast, if you're listening to this via audio, you won't be able to see it via audio, but and that's a shame for you, but we did get the Kylie Minogue Doctor Who poster framed for the studio, which, you know, is great thrill for me. Sontaran experiment, third episode, third story. A direct sequel, or it runs right off of the events of Ark in Space.
Right.
Have a jelly baby, buyer.
Thank you.
Short story too.
Yeah, and it was built that way because Philip Hinchcliffe didn't like the 6-episode serial format, and so he wanted to break them apart. The sad part is, of course, that they kind of had, you know, things already built, I guess, for a six-parter on the station one. They originally called it Ark in Space. And so, like, let's just kind of throw something in there, and this is what happened.
I feel a bit like a Morse message, slightly scrambled.
Yes.
Yeah, he then would fall into a 6-parter, I believe, with Genesis of the Daleks right after this one, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Now, this one was also shot completely on video, on location. So most of the time in this era, when you were out on location, out of a soundstage, you'd be shooting on 16mm film. But in this case, they decided to shoot everything in the exteriors on video, which is not normal in this era of Doctor Who. They did it on Robot, and they're doing it on this one.
I think they did it to save money, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if they were running up against a budget crunch because, as Elizabeth Sladen has said, these first few episodes ran right after the end of the third Doctor, so there wasn't a lot of room to maneuver, if I recall. Or at least Robot was. I think Robot was right after.
Yeah.
Robot and Planet of the Spiders were simultaneously produced.
Right.
And I think
Which is she had to run back and forth.
Yeah.
What you're trying to say is that you're busy and you'd like us to push off.
So for everybody who has watched is aware, but for those who haven't, what's the story?
Oh, for this story, they end up going back down to Earth after the events of Ark in Space. They go down to try to fix the transmat system so the humans who are there can go back down and repopulate the Earth. When Harry, the Doctor, and Sarah arrive, they find that, hey, there are people still on Earth. There's a handful of explorers. You find out that their ship was destroyed when they landed on this, assuming, isolated planet. And in the meantime, they're all being hunted by our favorite potato inside tinfoil.
The machine serves him, captures my crewmate. Who serves who? The thing in the rocks. I'll not get caught.
Not to be confused with Lynx from Time Warrior. What are our impressions of Steyr? It's it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue.
No, it doesn't. Field Major Steyr.
I am Steyr, Field Major Steyr, as you would address me, of the Sontaran G3 Military Assessment Survey.
What do you think?
Just like most of the Sontarans, he's very, by the book. He's a warrior. He's conducting. It seems odd that as and this might be my kind of Star Trek background as well. Like, it's where this is a warrior species, and then you got one guy who's like, well, I need to conduct these experiments. He's a little more scientific than most, Sontarans will see in the franchise.
That is a lie. There has been no intelligent life on this planet since the time of the solar flare.
But at the same time, it's not particularly, it's really regimented science.
Right.
Right.
It's war science.
Yeah. I will be conducting these tests. You'll be holding this bar. I'm going to increase the gravity. We're testing for, sturdiness of the rib cage and strength, that kind of thing.
Right. I was just when we were rewatching it, I was thinking to myself, I was like, okay, so in the Time Warrior, the Sontaran was there arming medieval, warlords.
Right.
In this one, he's testing for human weakness, which I guess maybe the other Sontaran couldn't get his findings back.
He did get blowed up.
He did.
Yeah.
He did, but he did go back to his ship a number of times, I would assume in the course of that story. So one would think he would be passing on that intelligence. Unless they're all seemingly regimented, but Sontarans are all actually rogue individuals in their own right. Like,
Or it could be, well, I can't send an incomplete report, so I will send the report when everything, which is this guy's thing. Is like, no, I have to do every test.
Right.
And then I'll tell you, his boss is screaming at him, please get me these results. We're ready to invade.
Thank you, Star. Then your report is complete. Not quite, Marshal. Why must there be any delay?
and why are they invading a planet that is otherwise unpopulated?
The impression I got is that they're not just invading Earth; they're invading like in a wave.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
They're marching across the galaxy. Is the same impression I got, and Earth just happens to be there. And it's I forget the species they're fighting against in this long-standing war, but it's opening up a new front.
Uh-huh.
You know.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like opening a new Chick-fil-A.
Ah.
Yeah.
Waffle fries. So, okay, fair enough.
Back to the potato.
Hey.
Yeah, you know, when I watched this one, first of all, I was stunned the first time I watched it by how short it was.
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought it would. Oh, it's 2 and it's done. You know, I was like, wow, we're into another story.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that I appreciated about it is that it was all done in exteriors. There is no set or soundstage at all, and they're just on the heath, you know, of England. Doing this episode. I do not understand how transmat beams work, and I do not understand why it's broken, and I don't understand why it behaves the way it does. Can somebody explain that to me?
Are you coming or going? Or going or coming?
It's made out of plutonium. It's whatever the screenplay needs it to be.
Okay, because
Yeah, it's these big round spheres they put in the middle of a field that is technology that will intended to last 5,000 years to outlast the solar flares, but then manages to actually last 10,000 more past their end-by date, which means these were not built by Microsoft.
It's not only oscillating, it's ellipsing as well.
so even though he has to start tinkering with them the moment he gets down there, I guess, because they're already kind of long in the tooth or something like that.
Yeah, good lord. Yeah, it's thankfully that nothing like continental drift happens over a 10,000-year span where these things
Right.
were.
Why does the Doctor agree to go down there? Like, if everybody on the Ark has woken up and it's time to go back down and repopulate,
Well, they did blow up the only other way off.
No, the shuttle.
right?
So
Right.
unless they're going to crash the ship into the Earth,
Uh-huh.
And
And
they
they can't
were-
use the transmat beam?
they have to use the transmat beam.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
they-
why aren't they going down first?
Well, they were in the process of waking everybody else up. I guess Vero stayed behind
Yeah.
to help the
Right.
process along. Harry, I thought was maybe going to no, we're all going. Like,
Yeah.
Well, the Brigadier did tell me to stick with you, Doctor, and orders is orders.
You can't just go by yourself. We're all going with you.
Right.
And so it's like, well, you're going down.
I'm not
by-
an NPC. I have to go.
right.
Right.
I'm getting paid for this gig. So it sounds like, the transmat being the only way down, but it may be dodgy. The Doctor's just going to go like, okay, let's go figure it out. Let's make sure it works to get you all back down to the planet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, because he's obsessively fixing this transmat beam to the point that he doesn't even realize that Harry and Sarah have wandered off.
Yeah.
And that's where the trouble starts because, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, he actually told them, like, I'm going to be a while. Like, go check out
Right.
Was it Trafalgar Square?
Yeah. Trafalgar Square is that way.
Down that way.
And I do
Right.
love her joke later of, this can't be Trafalgar Square. There's no pigeon in sight.
Trafalgar Square, my foot. Not a pigeon in sight.
Yeah, which is true. I mean, they're everywhere. It kind of, I know it sounds weird. It doesn't remind me in exact content, but it reminds me in look, feel, and setting of like a First Blood type situation.
Yeah.
You've got these people that are all hiding in the rocks and hiding in the heath and falling down holes and getting scraped up, and this one guy is after them. I don't know if the Sontaran would be Sylvester Stallone in this situation. Maybe it's the other way around. I don't know, but
I would have said most of the humans that were being chased, like especially the one leader guy with the spy cam on him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. they've all got a serious case of PTSD.
Yes.
Yeah, they've been captured and released, as part of these trials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like they've seen people die around them. Yeah.
Subject died after 9 days, 7 hours.
This episode has a body count, which again, that's something that's kind of a hallmark of classic era Who for me. Is there'll be a cast of 10, 3 will survive.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to be.
The Doctor Who was never shy about killing people off.
You won't torture me again. Why did you make that disagreeable noise?
It's going to be big in the John Nathan Turner era. It's starting now with Philip Hinchcliffe, where it's, before it's like, okay, we're going to go with the number of people. We're going to leave with slightly less because the enemies have to be dispatched. And you're going to see a lot more of the body count rising as we go forward.
It was because we have that one crazy guy who escaped, who had been apparently fire tested.
Roth.
What thing in the rocks?
The alien in the rocks. The machine captures us. Takes us for torture. I got away. See?
We only have, 3 that make it out? And there's a total of 5?
There were
6?
4, I thought. 5? 4
Yeah,
or
there was
5
the
on
guy.
bottom,
There was the guy shackled to the rock that was being.
Yeah, he dies of thirst.
Thirst.
Which,
Yeah. Ugh, horrible way to go. And then you have
despite Harry sticking the dirty rag in his mouth.
right, the soaked dirty rag. Yeah, I mean it was a good thought.
Yeah.
He just didn't live long enough to take advantage of it. He was probably too far gone.
Yeah.
At that point.
Well, I mean, when he comes in for the death report, he says it's been 9 days. I was like, I'm impressed he lasted that long. 'Cause usually it's 3.
Yeah.
Well, in England it's very moist and it's very wet there. So latent moisture and humid air, not humid, but yeah. I'm stretching here. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying it's impressive that he survived.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it may have been if Harry had shown up with a bucket of water, the guy was pretty much a goner.
Cheer.
Drink, damn you.
Yeah. It was.
Oh, he drowned. How terrible.
I do like the way they have to chase the plot down. They don't know, and I know that that's a hallmark of a lot of Who stories is they go into a situation and they don't know what's going on. But in this particular scenario, I felt like, okay, these guys are on the planet. They don't believe anything the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry are saying about the space station up above. That's a myth. They don't believe it.
You got any proof? Well, no, but then I didn't expect to meet anybody. I understood Earth wasn't inhabited.
And they just want to get away from this Sontaran guy who's trying to torture them, to oblivion. They've all got astronaut suits on without the helmets. They lost the helmets at some point, so they can't get away.
And they're ratty. I mean, they're ragged.
Yeah,
so obviously they've been here for a while.
I don't know. I love the fact that she's talking to Roth and he's kind of tweaked out at this point, so she's not getting completely straight answers out of him. She's trying to piece it together.
Do you live here, Rob? No, there's a space clothes on.
There's some really good built-in suspense in this one. For only 2 episodes, it's got some good suspense.
Yeah. And again, more great subtle world building when they're interrogating the Doctor.
While you were dozing away, our people kept going, and they made it. We got bases all across the galaxy now.
And I love the way the guy goes, "You superior people, think that you were the best, but we survived. We went out on our own." It's like, again, builds that the culture at the time was very...
You've done nothing for 10,000 years while we made an empire!
There was a little bit of the plot hole we talked about before, though, where it's like, the Nerva beacon sitting up in orbit. And these guys had to come in from orbit.
Yes.
They drove right by it, but hey, we've heard about it, but we've never seen it. We don't know.
It doesn't exist. No one ever found it.
No,
it's right there.
Coming in the neighborhood, you can't miss it.
Yeah.
Again, if they were to touch on it, which I know the final the Cybermen, it would have been nice if they put we've got a cloaking device.
Right. Yeah, that would have been nice, but they didn't think that. They did have a force field in this one.
That's true.
I can't get in.
A force field with a hallucinatory snake and
creeping mud
foam
and the rocks fall.
The rock fall. Yes, that's true.
And Harry is dogged and determined. Like, he runs into it again, and the third time just like, oh, I can't get through. You think.
Right.
You think you can't get through.
Right. He just didn't know where to melt that thing. He couldn't see it on the side. He could have smashed it with his tree branch.
Right.
But he didn't see it, so he ran off to get help.
Nothing has happened to you. It's only in your mind.
And got to give it up kind of to Harry because, he's exploring around with Sarah. And again, we talked about in the last episode of the show, but Sarah's a lot more comedic value a bit in this one at the beginning, like
Yep.
when they transmit down and she's doing the turtle thing.
Sarah? That sounds like Sarah.
And I love your observation that we should do an Adventure People.
Oh yeah, she looks like she looks like a Fisher-Price Adventure Person action figure from the 70s because she's a bright yellow with orange shoes. And, you know, she just looks like your average townsperson in a Fisher-Price toy line, you know.
I may need you to explain this to me because every time I see it, I look at that wardrobe and I'm like, what is going on here? Is there
It's a rain slicker.
Yeah, there's the rain slicker and pants, and then there's the rubber shoe. You know, you spent time in the UK. Can you elaborate anything on?
I can elaborate on those actual shoes
Okay.
because I don't remember if it's in the commentary or if it's in Elizabeth Sladen's biography, or it's a mixture of the two sources. But she talks about that those Wellingtons, they're called Wellingtons, she kept those from this production. They might have actually been hers. A lot of time on a lot of these Doctor Who productions, there was a lot of specialized wardrobe, but then there was a lot of times where they were like, just bring a few pairs of your pants and shoes so that we can use for this particular story. That happened to Elizabeth Sladen a lot. She kept those Wellingtons and she gardened with them for like 35 years. And then they were in the back of her car while she was at the shops one day, and somebody broke into her car and stole those Wellingtons. We don't even know if it was a crazy Who fan. She wasn't even back on TV at the time, I don't think. She was just...
Someone just went, hey, orange Wellingtons.
Orange Wellingtons, whoosh, and stole them.
Are they like the standard galoshes you see nowadays where there's not a lot of tread on them? It's just, you know, a rubber boot, or is there something more to them? Because I see her tromping around out there in the heath, and I'm like, that you can't have any traction. That it doesn't seem like it'd be very sturdy to like.
I had a green pair when I lived in the UK, and I was actually using them out in those landscapes. We were doing a science project out on the heaths, and mine they were green with a sort of beige sole, like a beige tread, and it was actually a fairly decent tread on them. But they were higher. They were. I don't know if hers are under her pants, but mine came up over my jeans. You know, almost like a pair of Han Solo boots.
Yeah.
But they were, you know, they were like light green. They looked like a Ninja Turtle skin. You know,
Pretty sturdy.
Yeah, they were sturdy. I mean,
Okay.
you could literally hose them off and then dry them out.
Okay.
Because I fell into a bog, like a peat bog, and then they had to pull me out, and my Wellingtons were filled with that mud but you literally could turn them over, use a hose, whoosh, hose them out. Yeah. So that's the story of. I don't know. I can't see her shoes beyond the ankle, and I'm sure our listeners by now are like, why are they talking about this? But
footwear is important.
Right.
Yes, the right footwear can make or break a good outfit.
You know, I'm just looking at this the same way I look at Jurassic World, and I see, you know, the female lead there running around in high heels. I'm like, why is Sarah Jane running around in galoshes? But if they're actually a legitimate, you know,
yes, in that
sturdy boots for that environment.
Yes, in that environment, those are it's only the color that's affronting. But otherwise, if they're those Wellingtons, then they're appropriate.
Okay, okay. Then I will wash out that criticism of mine, because every time I'll just be like, no, why? But if it makes sense, it's good.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I learned something new today.
Yeah. But she's definitely getting more of her action role back, because she does run off to try to find help. She does rescue the Doctor from being held by the three crazy guys.
I found your sonic screwdriver, Doctor, the pit.
What would I do without you?
I gotta give it up to Harry for his doggedness. He doesn't just sit in the hole. He finds his own way out.
Right.
He starts looking for the Doctor. He starts trying to. It's like he's actually more proactive this time.
Right. Right. And you know, the Doctor later falls into that same hole and finds the same way out. Now he has that funny. It sounds like an ad lib where he's like, "Well, this is hardly the Circle Line" or something like that, a reference to the London Underground.
No, it's not the Central Line.
Yeah.
And that's also for another behind the scenes bit. That's where he broke. Probably we're guessing that's where at some point in the serial he broke his collarbone.
Right, and he starts wearing his scarf loosely over that shoulder to try
and way up around his neck.
Yeah, way up around his neck. Yeah,
because he had a neck brace on.
Yep.
And if we haven't already given our hats off to Tom Baker for his role as the Doctor, this is like way up there. Because he's fighting through the pain and everything of that break.
Ah, Sarah, feeling better? No, don't tell me.
Yep.
To continue doing the job.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's also interesting to note that he's injured, And the guy that plays the Sontaran, who is the same actor from The Time Warrior, he had a serious heart condition, and he was exhausted and having a hard time in that big outfit a lot, and yet he powered through as well. And he died not long after. I think he lived a few years after this, but not long. I mean, he was pretty ill. So
and he was well versed in that costume because he was also Lynx from the Time Warrior.
Right.
Like he
And
was
he was the guy on the video screen, the major. Whatever.
the marshal or whatever it was. Yeah.
If it was a Sontaran, it was this guy.
Right.
I was surprised to find out that he was the monk from Planet of the Spiders too, the one that gives the Doctor the boost to regenerate. So it was like, oh, we have seen him before, just not as a potato.
Yes.
and that makeup, I mean, I'm still impressed by it. I mean, I can't remember if it worked exactly the same way between Time Warrior and this Sontaran experiment, but in this particular two-parter, I thought it was very convincing as far as the mouth articulation. And I mean, yeah, it's a big rubber head with some texturing on it, but the texturing is really good, and the articulation in the mouth is decent. So I was.
Yeah, there wasn't. It wasn't the whole. The mouth falls open. He keeps talking.
Right.
Yeah, there were parts. Which I'm sure on broadcast you couldn't see, but watching it now, you can see the cut of the eyes.
Right.
You can see a little hint of the actor's mouth in there.
Right.
But I'm sure at the broadcast at the time, you probably didn't even notice.
Yeah.
If you do, tell us in the comments.
Absolutely,
below.
And they're playing little subtle differences too. Like for being clones, there's still some differences. I mean, the armor, sure, the marshal's got two little,
he's got those things on the front.
On the front. Dalek bumps. No, but the Steyr, you could see a couple little hairs from maybe a pseudo beard or something like that. Like there's enough difference you could tell the characters apart.
Right. Yeah. The actual skin tone of his head was different from the guy in the Time Warrior as well.
Put a black mark on the nose.
Yeah.
And I really did we found out by watching the trivia track on the Blu-ray that that it was actually an ad lib from Elizabeth Sladen, but the Sarah Jane's character was like, that can't be Lynx who we defeated.
Right.
We saw him blowing up, and then that's the mythology. They're all clones.
Lynx. Sontaran. Can't be. You were destroyed in the 13th century.
Right.
But she didn't know that because she's only met one.
She's only met one, and I believe that is the first one in Who is Time Warrior, which was only about a year before this episode would have aired, a year and change. So in essence, the audience that would have been watching the last Pertwee season would still be watching through, so there would be a through line. And I think you and I, we all commented that given the prevalence of the Sontarans both in the modern series and then into the Sarah Jane Adventures, it's almost like that becomes her Dalek. Like Sarah Jane's Dalek are the Sontarans in her mythology.
Yeah. And originally it was supposed to be a different alien race, and then they went, well, to save money, we've already got the Sontaran suit. Let's just make it the Sontarans.
I think that was a great way to go.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows a lot of the great villains of Who start off as a one-off. Then hey, let's do those guys again. Let's build something with them.
It's the smartest way to go.
Now, I haven't seen the Sarah Jane Adventures yet. That's on my list, obviously. I know from the 11th Doctor's era with Strax as part of the Paternoster gang. The voices are very similar between this Sontaran and Strax in the future.
Right.
Were the performances essentially the same in Sarah Jane, like the same kind of voicing and everything?
Yeah, I mean it's the same quality of costume, the same quality of makeup, the same voice, the same everything, and
I think it's the same guy.
It might
they try
be,
to use him as much as they can.
I think it is the same guy.
Okay.
Now, don't quote me on that, but I think it is. I mean, he's spot on. I mean, so and he recurs. It's not just one episode. He comes back a few times. So.
Okay. Nice.
Although I think my favorite Strax thing is still the bit they did before the 50th anniversary playing in the movie theater, which if you've never seen it is hilarious. Him talking about, don't talk during the movie. I love eating the popcorn. I like the way it screams as you crunch it.
And we did kind of make the one-off joke about one of the big things for Strax in the 11th Doctor's era is he keeps referring to Clara, the companion, as boy. And yet here, Steyer is obviously able to recognize the female of the species.
The female of the species.
Yeah, and he's actually excited because, I've got a new person to test.
Female, number 1, first assessment. Would appear to have no military justification.
You definitely get the feeling this is a guy who loves his job.
Oh, well, sure. The Sontarans have their own distinct militant personality. They like their singular vision of how they go about the universe, And it's almost like the who are the Rhino guys?
Oh, the Jadoon.
The Jadoon. Yeah, they have their own singular way of doing things. They're more about law and order and justice, and Sontarans are more about, like Klingons. They just want to have their empire and dominate and the glory of war, and and then Daleks have their own
destroy everything.
Destroy everything. Right. Space Nazis. Yeah. But I really appreciated the way we got to see through the Sontarans' eyes how alien races view humans, because you hear about that a lot with other alien races in Doctor Who, is that the humans are low tech and weak, and they haven't made it as far as we have, and they're clueless and all this kind of stuff. And this guy puts that into reality, where he's like, I just want to see how much weight their rib cage can take. So let's just start dialing up the weight. Let's see what it takes to crush him.
And instead of just putting the weight on him and ratcheting it up, he makes the two guys hold it.
So that way
there's a sadism in it.
Of course, and he can also then get extra data, where he's like, I've also determined from the same experiment how much the average human male can hold before he drops it. And I love the fact that he says, I'm going to spare you because you're female. Like he tells Sarah Jane, you're more interesting. I'm going to keep you around longer.
I'm going to kill these guys.
Right, yeah, these are chaff, but,
Yeah, and speaking about that, I love when the Doctor uses that against the Sontaran when he shows up, going, ha, you think that's the warrior caste? That's our slave caste.
Oh, yeah, it just starts playing him. He's like, no, you lie,
They're our slave caste, the lowest form of human intelligence.
You lie!
He understands the psychology of the Sontarans.
He does, because he's faced off with them before. Now, he had a white pompadour then, but he faced off against them.
What did we think, talking about that fight, what do we think about the action aspect of Tom Baker's Doctor?
Good stuntman.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Baker was injured, broke his collarbone. The show must go on. And I think, especially given with the footage that we saw, which was on the remastered Blu-ray, I was fairly convinced that if that had been broadcast quality, we wouldn't have been so quick to see the stuntman. I mean, we would have known in our minds because we know the behind the scenes of the episode, but I think the stuntman was very nicely edited into this one, and it didn't look so obvious. Like there are some episodes, like with Pertwee, where the stuntman just turns to camera and he's standing there for like 6 seconds, and you can tell it's not Pertwee.
Right.
Same thing with Captain Kirk in the original series, and even some TNG episodes, the stuntmen just stand out like a sore thumb. This one was actually pretty slickly edited. I liked it.
I also actually liked the fight. I liked it. It was sort of athletic, but it did not last very long, at which they made the point of him saying Strax is not going to have the endurance to go long. He's going to have to go back and recharge. Right. And I do like the way, kind of, again, it's a kind of a character thing that Strax is like, no, I gotta go. I gotta, you wait here. I gotta go charge. I'm gonna come back and finish killing you.
Right. Yeah.
It's not the whole, brave and mocking it up of like, oh, I'll kill you. But no, it's like, give me a minute.
He had that penguin moment from Batman Returns where it's like, I'll kill you in a minute, but first I need a drink.
And I do love the sleight of hand where, the plan is, okay, Harry, while I'm distracting him, you get in there and you get his basically his battery recharger, get it out of there so that when he goes back into recharge, there's nothing he can do. What did you think of the what a world effects as he died? He's like the Wicked Witch.
The deflating potato.
Yeah.
Right. It was kind of creepy looking, but again, you could tell it was just the mask going.
What's worse, that effect or his robot.
I was waiting for us to get to that.
Right.
It's a cool design, but it's a crap robot.
It is totally a crap robot.
Yeah.
I can't believe like they just came off Robot, which had a much better robot. But for the King Kong effects, that would have been a fairly decent robot, right?
Right.
And now we get to this.
With the weird nose wires.
Yeah, it looked like something out of like Johnny Quest or something.
I kind of wonder if that was a holdover. You know, like you said, it was supposed to be a different alien, right? So maybe it was an insectile. Is that right? I don't know. Insect type, type of species. Maybe the Wern coming back, and they built a Wern type robot. And then like, oh no, you know what?
I could actually see that.
Let's throw the Sontaran in there instead.
Actually, I can see that with the wires and the way the head is, and those little pincer hands being like hands.
What if it was like a Weirin exosuit?
Ooh.
Right?
And the way that Dr. Defeat just pointing the sonic screwdriver at it, and it goes, oh, damn.
Yeah, I love it too. He's like, I'm not going to hurt you. Zap.
The doctor talks to that robot the same way I talk to dogs. Like, hey, buddy. Who's a good boy?
Who's a good robot? Who's a good killer robot? Who's a good killer robot?
Here's what I can't figure out, though, and I know we talked about this a little bit during the screening, but at the end, right, he's stopped the Sontaran for good.
Yeah.
And he saved 3 of the astronauts, cosmonauts, whatever you want to call them, space explorers.
Right.
And now they fixed the transmat system and they're going to go back. And he's like, yeah, we're going to go back and we're going to tell them, that we're, you're down here and everything's going to be okay. Well, I just don't understand why I guess they could only go 3 at a time because it was 3 bays in the Ark in Space. It's only 3 bays.
Yeah.
Well, the 3 guys were like, we're not transmatting.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what happened?
Because at one point they do say, I don't. One of them says, I don't trust transmat beams.
Okay.
They McCoyed it that way, and then at the same time, like I can see if they're going back up to say the transmat's fixed, you guys can all beam down now. Why would those guys go up just to come back down?
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense. Okay, so then the question becomes,
and the people up on the station were supposed to radio their people and say, hey, come get your boys.
Yeah.
Right. But then we all know that doesn't end up happening that way, and they end up back on that station 2 stories later because of reasons, and it's a completely different time period. And so what can we now infer about the fate of those 3 guys?
Either the nerve of the people were smart enough to figure out transmatting on their own and went down, and stories.
You got to figure after a certain point, she's like, I don't think he's coming back. We better go down.
Right.
Or they play the same card we talked about in Ark in Space, where it's like, well, it's not my job to figure out that thing's working or not. And so they all just sit up there and hang out while these 3 guys just waste away on the planet's surface, eating whatever strange fruit or whatever it was they had.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's an interesting conundrum, and I don't know what happens, beyond this point to those characters.
Right. It's grim.
Yeah.
If there was a Big Finish storyline about this, please tell us below. Big Finish, I know you're watching. We'll take 10%.
I have all your Sarah Jane adventures, Big Finish.
Right?
Yeah, that actually would be, again, like going back to before the Ark went up and following up on this would be great Big Finish storylines.
Yeah, it would be, where they wouldn't have to worry about getting
especially
a
if they got, especially if they could get Baker back. Because they've done some with him.
Yeah.
And Baker would definitely be in for it. Maybe Baker comes circling back around with Leela or Romana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, with Romana would be fun.
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Regenerating. Do you like it?
And I've really got to ask the 2 of you, would you willingly jump off a cliff to get away from that robot? That one guy jumps off and breaks his own neck. That's a little.
I give all props to that guy. I'm like, man, that guy's like, I regret nothing, and then he takes a dive. I was like, he's the kind of guy I'd want to fight a war with. If I had to go into battle, I'd want that guy because he's not going to give himself up. Not that being a prisoner is anything wrong with that in the right circumstance, but what I'm saying is that guy,
he was dedicated.
He was like, I'm a take no prisoners, and I won't be a prisoner kind of guy. I mean,
I agree when he got to the point of the cliff, like, okay, it's either getting nailed by the Sontaran again or death, death. But much like every other show we've seen where like buildings falling on you or they're coming right at you, like just go right or left.
No, I think Sontaran Experiment is a good bridge between a great story and arguably the greatest story in the history of Who. We can debate those merits on the next go around.
Yeah.
But it is a short little adverb in the sentence that is Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's one I'd pop in just be like, oh, I want to sit down and watch Doctor Who. Let's put in the Sontaran Experiment.
Right.
You know, it's a great bridge. It's definitely a part of the Nerva Beacon arc, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not one it's definitely not a skip it, but it's don't go out of your way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
if you've never watched the season before, watch it, but I don't
Yeah.
think you need a lot of revisits.
You could almost skip it and go right from Ark in Space to Genesis of the Daleks and not miss anything because they're intercepted by the Time Lords.
Right.
You know, and there might be a line in there where they're like, this doesn't look like the Nerva station or whatever, in which case that would break the continuity. But,
Right.
you know, do you think it's essential viewing?
I wouldn't call it essential.
Right.
Yeah, it's not essential. It's a decent or a decent story though.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you got an hour to kill, sure.
Right.
But,
It's not an essential story.
Yeah, again,
No.
if you've never watched this season at all,
Right.
yeah.
sure.
Right.
But, you know, if you're just trying to watch the essentials, this is not essential.
Yeah.
Or if you're a Sontaran fan.
Or, if you're a Sontaran.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Then.
Sontar Ha. You know.
Yeah.
Ask Harry, he did it.
You are nothing, do you understand? You are a mistake and must therefore be eliminated. According to my data, you should not exist. Next time, Earthling, we shall utterly destroy you.
Not today,